to Jonah Hill Church Online. I'm Lola.
And I'm Jamie.
Today we're looking at Jonah Chapter 4.
But that will be after a time of worship.
Jesus is the rock. Hey! Yeah, he's the rock. I said Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Come on. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he's the rock. The Lord's our rock, in him we hide. A shelter in the time of storm. Secure in him we will abide. A shelter in the time of storm. Hey, yeah. Jesus is the rock in a weary land. Oh, weary land. Oh, Jesus is the rock in a weary land. A shelter in the time. My shelter in the storm. I said Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he is the rock. A shade by day, defense by night. A shelter in the time of storm. No fears alarm, no foes of fright. Shelter in the time of storm. There's nothing to fear, 'cause Jesus is the rock in a weary land. Weary land. Oh, weary land. Oh, Jesus is the rock. My rock. Yes, sir. A shelter in the time of storm. You believe it, let me hear you say. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. He's my rock. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he's the rock. I said Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Come on. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he's the rock. I said Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he's the rock. Raging storms may round us beat. A shelter in the time of storm. We'll never leave our safe retreat. A shelter in the time of storm. All I need to know is Jesus is the rock in a weary land. Weary land. Oh, weary land. Oh, Jesus is the rock. He's my rock. On him I stand. If you feel me, clap your hands now. Jesus is the rock in a weary land. Weary land. Oh, weary land. Oh, Jesus is the rock in a weary land. A shelter in the time. Say it with me now. I said Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Yeah, he's the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus is the rock. He's the rock.
Last time we saw Jonah preaching in Nineveh, saying 40 days and Nineveh will be overthrown. That was the message that God had for the Ninevites. The Ninevites repented and fasted, asked for God's forgiveness, and God forgave them and didn't end up destroying the city. In chapter 4, we see how Jonah is furious. He's exceedingly angry that God didn't destroy Nineveh. And he even said to God, that's the reason why I tried to run away from you towards Tarshish. Because I know that you are a loving God, merciful, gracious, compassionate, patient, always kind, always ready to forgive, always ready to change your mind and not to punish. That's why I ran away. Wow. Jonah. And you know what he also said? He said that he, as Jonah, would be better off dead than alive. Because he didn't want to see this type of forgiveness given to the Ninevites. Anyway, Jonah went out of the city, eastward out of the city, and he made himself a perch high up so that he could look over into the city. Probably God might change his mind and destroy Nineveh. Anyway, he decided that he was going to watch and see what was going to happen. So he made himself a place that he could overlook the city and sat down. And then God appointed a plant to grow. A plant that grew and gave Jonah some wonderful shade. And Jonah was really very happy because he was now very comfortable. The sun wasn't beating his head. He was happy. However, at dawn the next day, God appointed a worm to eat the stem of this plant. And of course, it died. Then the sun rose and it was scorching. And then there was an east wind, true, really hot. And this sun was beating down on Jonah's head. And Jonah was exhausted and he felt faint. He was so angry. He was so angry that the plant had died. And again he said, it would be better if he were dead than being alive. And God asked Jonah, is it okay that you are angry because the plant died? And Jonah said, of course. Of course. It was good for him to be angry that the plant had died. That is better for him to be dead than to be alive and going through what he was going through. And God said, this anger, you are angry for something that you didn't put in place. You are angry that it has gone. This anger that you have should rather be for the possibility that Nineveh would have been destroyed, because there are 120,000 people in that city and animals who really didn't know their left from their right. That is what you should have been angry about. Angry that they would be destroyed. Jonah, Jonah, Jonah. He knew that God is compassionate, He's merciful, He's forgiving. But it looked as though he only wanted God to show this mercy, compassion and love to him and his people and not to others. Even though these people had repented and in their heart changed their ways. You know what? It's a good thing that Jonah and people like Jonah, in fact, even us, that we are not God. Because it might be a bit difficult for us to forgive people and be patient and compassionate the way God is towards us. God is compassionate and merciful and gracious to us all. Isn't that good to know? And that's the end of the story.
Hi everybody! So, our friend Jonah has been in the storm. He has been swallowed by the fish. He has had to repent, hasn't he? But he still doesn't really understand the great big mercy of God. And it's hard, isn't it, to want God to forgive people who've been mean or people who've been horrible. But God's mercy and grace is so big. It is so much bigger than we can imagine. It is big enough for everybody who chooses to turn to God. And so I've put on that verse. God is gracious and compassionate. He is slow to anger and he is abounding in love. So let's make these great, big, loving arms to remind us of God's mercy. So first of all, you need two colours, one for the head and hands and one for the sleeves. I've got yellow like a Lego man. And what you want to do is fold the hand colour in half so you can make both hands at once. And either you can draw around your hand, but I found with my hand they just looked too big, they looked silly, but your hands will be a bit smaller. But if you want to just draw a hand, freestyle, what you want to do is come up for the thumb, then have quite a big gap, and then do 3 longer fingers for these 3 in the middle, and then a shorter one for the pinky, and come in to the wrist. Okay, there we are. Not sure about that. You might be better drawing around your hand. Then cut those out, and you want them positioned so that the thumbs are at the top. Now, for the sleeves, what you want to do is take the colour of paper that you want to use and just put your hands onto them. Just use A4 and put the hands on and draw a line along so that the sleeve is slightly wider than the hand, so it goes over it at the cuff, and cut that out. So I've got my piece here, and then all we're going to need to do is put a little bit of glue onto each hand and stick the sleeve over the top. Here we are at one end, and there's the other. And then we're going to make the head, and the head it's not in proportion with the hands, because the point is the hands are kind of coming out like they're great big hugging hands. So again, get the colour that you're using for the skin and just get something round and draw around it and cut out your head. Here we are. Here's the one I've got, and the head you can stick on overlapping the sleeves, just like the chin comes down. Okay, like this. And now obviously we need to draw on a face. You can do that however you want. I'm just doing eyes, nose, and mouth. I'm just colouring in the eyes just a little bit. So I'm leaving some of it the colour of the background that gives them that kind of alive, sparkling look. There we go. And now all you need to do is write something on the tummy. Now, you might just want to write, God forgives, or God is merciful, or God's mercy is so great. Okay, so anything like that. But I quite like this verse, God is gracious and compassionate. I think the whole thing together, it just sums up how good God is to us. Slow to anger. Maybe we want him to be angry with the people that we don't like, but we're very pleased that he's slow to get angry with us, aren't we? And abounding in love. Abounding, what a good word. He's so full of love. Abounding in love. There we go. Now, obviously, he's not going to stand up like that, so you just need to bend in the arms at each side. Okay, so he bends around like that. And there we go. A reminder, a picture of God's great grace, compassion, mercy, and forgiveness that Jonah wasn't too sure about, but I am very, very grateful for. Well, I hope you enjoyed this craft, and I will see you next week. Bye!
I can't believe Jonah. Well, I actually can. But let's see. Jonah had a reason for running away from God. Even though he should have known that he can't be successful in running away or hiding from God.
Go on, what's the reason?
Well, he knew that God would forgive the Ninevites. Once they were warned, there would be time for repenting.
Oh yes. What it was is that he didn't want God to show them kindness or mercy. He was so angry that God forgave him. A question I think about is, does Jonah really think he can determine who God forgives?
Great question. Mercy, compassion, and graciousness is God's to give. Jonah and us do not get to determine who God gives these to. God has his own reasons for giving these to these people because he can see their hearts.
That's right. And God can see our hearts. I'm glad he sees mine. That's it for this week.
Till next time, bye!